Joining me now is Roy Cathey of Roy Cathey and the Fifth. They have a great new song called Haunted Heart, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Roy, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Christian. I appreciate it very much. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. It's a little warm, but it's June, and if you live in the Valley in LA like I do, you get used to it. So no complaints.
I lived in the valley before, and I do know about the heat. But I'm in the South, so we have the heat and the humidity.
Yeah. So all right. So I guess I won't complain to you because I know that all too well. I made the mistake of going to New Orleans in July once, but anyway,
Oh my God!
it's such a beautiful city the rest of the year. But
Absolutely.
there's a few things I always like to talk to musicians about when I'm first getting to know them, and I always think where you grew up is a big part of that, but also if you have some of the earliest memories of music just on in the background, maybe stuff your parents were into, friends, neighbors, that sort of thing. So, what do you feel like is maybe the foundation that your appreciation for music is built on?
Well, I was a child of the 70s, so I was raised in a household that, my father had a very eclectic taste in music. But not only that, I grew up with four sisters. So I grew up with a house full of like those, AM radio hits from back in the day, Horse with No Name and a lot of Paul McCartney and Wings. And, my
With
father loved
a dash of Bay City Rollers in there.
a little bit of Bay City Rollers, of course, and my dad loved like Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson. He was really big into the outlaw country. So, I had a very eclectic background as far as the kind of music that was coming at me all the time. And I just remember as a child, especially stuff like the Paul McCartney and Wings, Venus and Mars. I was fascinated with the different sounds on that record, the different textures, how he would have like the megaphone sound on a couple of the verses and stuff. So at a very early age, I was very enthralled with textures and sounds and melody. So I think that really that played a huge role in me later on in my songwriting.
Yeah, technology really started to get involved more and more as it expanded throughout the 70s. I mean, I when I was a kid, I could not figure out what Peter Frampton was doing with that talk box thing. I'm like, is there a robot on stage? What is
Right.
that? Yeah.
Right. And I remembered that album because my sisters played it constantly, man. I mean, I remember being a kid listening to that and almost feeling high listening to it. You
I
know what I mean?
I love the line in Wayne's World about that album that Frampton comes alive. If you move out to the suburbs, they just put it through the mail slot along with packets of Tide. It's like everybody needs to have it.
It was a prerequisite back in the day. You had to have it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because my dad had a very extensive record collection from the 60s into the early 70s. He met my mom in 1974, and his record collection ends right there. It puts the brakes on. But it was like he had, it was like, oh, I want to hear, the Stones. He had all the Stones albums. He stopped before Exile on Main Street, unfortunately. But it was like, oh, I want the Doors albums, all six of them, and doing that in the
Right.
early 90s, it was like, it would have cost me hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to go buy all these on CD. So I was just like,
Absolutely.
listening to all my dad's records. My mom, on the other hand, she had two 8-tracks, John Denver and Barry Manilow. And what I'll say about both of them, incredible songwriters.
Absolutely.
But I didn't really catch the bug from listening. I liked John
Yeah.
Denver with the Muppets more than
Yeah.
just listening
Yeah.
to the 8-track,
But Copacabana, baby. Copacabana.
I know it's tough. I mean, it's such an epic story,
Yes, and it's a story that we all can relate to, isn't
And I
it?
still, you know what, Roy? I still don't know who shot who. Are we ever
I
going to know?
We're never going to know. It's almost like who shot JR. We're never really going to know.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm a bit more of the who shot Mr. Burns era, but I know what you're saying.
Excellent. Excellent, Smithers.
So, what was the first live music that you saw? Whether someone brought you or you bought a ticket to it?
Believe it or not, the first concert that I went to was AC/DC's Back in Black tour,
Whoa,
1980.
nice.
And that was like my first exposure to a live rock show. And it was back in the day where all your friends talked about the upcoming concerts. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I had no idea who AC/DC was. I just knew that all my friends were going to this concert. And, I'll never forget my mom and dad letting me go. I bought the ticket. They dropped me off in front of the local arena. And it was, back in the day where everybody was smoking weed in the place. You know
Sure.
what I mean? There's like a cloud of marijuana smoke, like above the rafters and everything. And I just remember getting down on the floor and like getting as close to it as I possibly could. And I just got so damn high from the contact buzz. And the closer I got to the front, I noticed, people start, back then they were like passing the stuff around and everything. So it was like I would like took a hit or two and everything. And I'll never forget after the concert was done. My mom and dad met me in the front of the arena and everything. And I got into the back seat and I'm just sitting about like this. And they're like, "Well, son, did you have a good time?" And I'm like, "It was great, Dad." And they just kind of looked at me and went, yeah, okay. So, but yeah, AC/DC Back in Black tour, Cumberland County Arena here in Fayetteville, North Carolina was my
That
first experience.
That's an amazing first show, and I can only imagine what that was like. The first show I ever went to, I've talked about this many times on the show, but for my audience, Roy's only here this time. He hasn't heard me talk about this before. So in 1990, I grew up in New York, but I've lived in LA for 25 years.
Mhm.
So I went and saw Alice Cooper on the Trash tour in March of 1990. I remember that, and I
Nice.
was at a place called the Ritz, which had previously been Studio 54. So,
Right.
so I went there, and it was amazing. And then that summer at the local fairgrounds out where I lived, I saw Kiss with Slaughter, Aerosmith with the Black Crowes,
Nice.
and Whitesnake with Steve Vai, and Faster Pussycat were opening. And I,
Wow.
I
Good stuff.
remember, going to those shows, and especially after Alice Cooper and then going to see Kiss, I'm like, oh, so all right. So everybody shows like this big production with like, monsters and beheadings and lasers. And, Kiss didn't have the makeup on then, but it was still a pretty big, laser light show and flames
Yeah.
and everything. And then the first time you ever see a band where it's like, the music would be good, but it's just a couple of guys just standing around, you're like, oh, what's this about? Why did I
What
pay for
is
this?
this?
You know?
This is boring.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of the bands I listened to in college, to be honest, it was like, all right. And then
Yeah.
you have the people who come along, there's obviously those videos of like, Eddie Vedder climbing up speakers, on top of
Uh-huh.
amps and stuff. But for the most part, people are like, yeah, I'm not doing that,
Yeah,
So
yeah. Too much of an insurance risk. I don't think he did that too many times.
let's put it this way. He's older than I am, and I know he hasn't done it in a while. So
I
I
could
can't imagine.
guarantee. I could guarantee.
So, at what point do you start to think? Obviously, you go see AC/DC. Brian Johnson's amazing. He's new at that point. But at what point do you start to think like, well, I feel like I should be doing this? Did you put a band together with your friends, or what happens for you, Roy?
Well, basically, I was a jock all through junior high up into high school, and I was
Right.
playing football. But I was the kind of kid that I was friends with everybody. I was friends with the jocks. I was friends with the stoners, the preps, black, white, yellow, green. It didn't matter for me. So
Mhm.
I had a friend of mine that had a little band, and they were rehearsing one day, and he invited me down to come check them out. And I'll never forget, man, something about Van Halen 1. That album just really touched me. You know what I mean? And I knew it backwards and forwards. And I went to go see the guys rehearse, and they were doing "You Really Got Me." And the singer didn't have the cadence, the "girl, you really got me now." There's a rhythm to it. And I was a cocky little jock, you know what I mean? And I'm like, "Hey man, you're doing it wrong." And he goes, "Oh yeah? Oh yeah? Oh yeah? Okay. Well, why don't you try it?" And he hands me the microphone, and I'm like, "Okay." And I had lip synced it and sang it in my bedroom so many times. The band starts, I nail it. They fire him, they hire me. And I'll never forget coming home from that. And I come in, and my mom was making dinner. My dad was sitting at the kitchen table. And I go, "Mom, Dad, I'm singing in a rock band." And my mom goes, "The hell you are." she said, you're about to start varsity next year. We just invested all this money for you to go to that NC State football camp. She just starts railing on me. My dad didn't say a word. He quietly gets up from the kitchen table, walks down the hallway, goes back into his bedroom. I hear the closet door open, and he starts rummaging through all this stuff. Then I see him coming down the hallway. My mom's still just raising hell, telling me all the reasons that I shouldn't do it. And he puts a record down, and it's the Cathey Trio, and it's his brother and cousin, and they did a gospel bluegrass record back in the day. And he said, "This is where you get it from. Judy, shut the hell up. If the boy wants to sing, the boy's gonna sing." And that was pretty much it, and I'm very blessed that my father supported me 100%. He managed my band. He drove the equipment truck. We traveled up and down the East Coast for 9 years, playing from Pennsylvania down to Florida. He invested in a PA and a light show. I turned into the family business. I was a show business baby from the age of like 16 on. And, when I was still, in high school, I was playing the local bars. You know what I mean? And when I was a senior in high school, my band Gibraltar, we had the number one song on the local FM station. You had a call-in show, and we were the local high school band. So all the high school kids called in, and we were like the number one song for a long time. So when I was a senior in high school, you couldn't tell me nothing. You know what I mean? You go into the high school guidance counselor's office. Well, Roy, coming up on graduation, you got any thoughts? College, what are you going to plan? I'm like, dude, I'm going to be the next Bon Jovi. Just let me go. You know what I'm saying? But, my dad supported me. My mom supported me as well. And for many, many years, we played the clubs all over. And, I got my lucky break one time we were playing down in Florida. And that's how I got the Cold Sweat gig. And, I never been on an airplane before. And I flew out on a Monday. I auditioned on a Wednesday, and I was signing a record deal on Friday. And I had to call my mom and dad, and they had to mail my clothes out to LA because we went right into the studio and started pre-production on the record. So I was very, very lucky to have parents, especially my father, who believed in me and let me pursue my dreams.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of people have sort of the opposite of that they, were met with the resistance the whole way. It's interesting that, for you, there's this crossroads, and it's basically, a plot line in the movie Dazed and Confused. The character has to decide if he's going to, continue playing. And, it definitely seems like an either or, because you can't give it all you got to, go varsity and then also really try to be a singer. And, yeah.
Well, also something that happened to me, it's like I was the starting quarterback one year. Summer went by. I came back for the rehearsal, not the rehearsals, but the practices before the next season. Everyone else grew about 3-4 inches, and I stayed the same. And after I got the crap knocked out of me a couple of times, I went, this whole singing thing sounds like a pretty good idea, So it was kind of one of those things that, and plus it was at the height of the 80s thing, you know what I mean? And there was just so much excitement, and the chicks loved the bands, and you know what I mean? Any young testosterone driven kid at my age was going to go like, okay, football, sweating, running laps, getting creamed by guys 3 times your size, or let's sing in a rock band, wear spandex, and have chicks screaming all the time. It was pretty easy to say.
Right, exactly. It's a defining moment where you go like, well, look, if I'm built like Troy Aikman, I'm going to stick with football. But look at David Lee Roth. He's amazing. He's the coolest guy in the world, but he's also not a giant,
Right. Yeah, it's true. And David Lee Roth is the guy that made me want to be a rock star, but I'd cut my teeth on, I had that musical background. So I loved bands like Queen and Judas Priest. I remember hearing Unleashed in the East and just being blown away with Rob Halford's voice, and Queen Live Killers and News of the World and just all that stuff. So I was always very musical. You know what I mean? It was always in me through my father. So, it was a course that seemed very natural the way it all progressed.
Yeah, when I was doing my research, trying to be a good host and interviewer, I looked you up and I came across some videos that are very old. I
Mhm.
guess you were involved with something called Queen Extravaganza. And so I've seen you do Somebody to Love and Crazy Little Thing Called Love. So talk a little
Right.
bit about what that was. The context of it, I feel like I can kind of piece together what it was, but I wasn't familiar with what the concept was, what those videos
Well,
were for.
basically it was this huge worldwide nationwide talent search for the next vocalist for Queen, and
Yeah.
before they tapped Adam Lambert with it, it was all a marketing ploy. They already had him picked out for a long
Yeah.
time. So basically it was just one of those things where you submitted your videos, and like I said, I grew up loving Queen and loving Freddie Mercury and stuff like that, and it just it was one of those ventures that you take on when you're a singer and an entertainer. You're like, you see that advertised, and you're like, hey, what the hell, I love Queen, I'll do it. So it was fun. Shot a couple videos and made it a couple rounds, but other than that, it was just nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Right, and it gave me an excuse to listen to two great Queen songs. Yeah, hearing
Oh,
you sing them. So it was just earlier today. I was in the kitchen and I'm like, "Oh, this is pretty cool."
yeah.
So yeah, I figured it was something like that. And they've had Adam Lambert for a while. It's interesting, the way that bands will, long established bands will get the replacements. Obviously, the best, craziest stories are Nel Pineda from
Oh
Journey,
yeah. Oh,
who it
amazing.
was just like he was just basically singing karaoke in the Philippines, and somebody
Yep.
saw a video. I was like, I think we need this guy, and I've seen them with him a couple of times, and I'm like, well, he's amazing,
Yeah,
and
he is a
it's
phenomenal singer.
yeah.
Phenomenal.
The first show he ever did with them, it was somewhere in South America and it was televised. It was just part of the deal. So he's like he's running around the stage and the guys in Journey are laughing. Not so much like, oh, look at this idiot. It's more like, oh my God, this is not what we're used to. Like, look, we don't
Yeah,
move like
I
that.
yeah, I mean, it's really amazing if you see his earlier shows. You
Yeah.
nailed it, man. The kid was everywhere. He was full of adrenaline. He was full of piss and vinegar. And can you imagine? I mean, this is like a dream come true for him. So he
Yeah.
was so jacked on adrenaline. Those guys by then they were in their early 50s. They're looking
Yeah.
at this guy going, "Holy cow!"
Yeah.
But
Which I'm sure
he's
if you got to stand in front of the guys in Journey and sing faithfully, you probably would have a lot of adrenaline, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially in front of about 100,000
Yeah,
people.
that's a great point.
But I've played a show, in front of 65,000 people, and I know all about that adrenaline rush. It's an amazing feeling whenever you're in front of that many people. It really is.
Yeah, no, I would imagine that it feels that way. And one of the other things I saw is that you're a part of a Boston tribute band called Don't Look Back. So,
Mhm.
and a friend of mine used to host a show for Access TV that highlighted tribute bands. It was called World's Greatest Tribute Bands,
I
and
remember that.
yeah, they would play at the Whiskey. And
Mhm.
so I went and I saw it, and I'm not even going to name which bands, but there were a couple times, Roy, where I'm like, this tribute band is so much better than the current incarnation of the actual band. And I'm not saying
Right.
that about Boston. And, I'm
Yeah.
just saying that more of a general. And, you travel enough around the country and you're like, look at some of these rooms the tribute bands are playing in. And it can be big business. So that must be
Yeah.
great to get to go out there and, represent the music of Boston.
Well, it's definitely, it's not something that everybody can do. You know what I mean? Boston was
Sure.
one of those bands musically and vocally that was like super, super top notch. And these guys have been doing it for about 10 plus years. So I came in after the original singer decided that he was done doing it and everything like that. But I mean, the tribute band thing is big business right now, and we play some amazing casinos and a lot of corporate events and a lot of those community events, the live after fives and stuff like that. And these guys are the real deal, because they spent 2 months just working on the vocal harmonies before they even tackled the guitars. And they make a genuine effort to look the part. The drummer wears the big Zeb wig, he's got the big, the guy that does Barry DeGrow, he glues on the mustache, and we're all wearing the 70s garb. We do it in a tasteful way. It's not corny in any way, but it's a top-notch band, and it's a lot of fun. Whenever you get to play on stage with some really top-notch musicians, and you're walking out on stage and there's like 5, 6, 8,000 people, one of the first shows that I did with them, I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's a tribute band, make some good money. They're flying me in, flying me out, nice hotel, nice green room. This is all great. I walk out on stage and there's like 6,000 people. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? But I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I've got a full summer all over the United States coming up. I actually got a show at Agora Hills coming up, and
it's at Canyon.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, I love that room. It's
yeah.
you want to talk about it? It can get a little hot, but
oh yeah, I'm sure.
I've seen some great shows there, so that's
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, I've gotten to know a guy named Rich Kosak, who is the Paul in a Kiss tribute band called Mr. Speed, and I've talked to him a few times on the show. And it's like, well, I needed to get these boots, so I went to the guy Paul Stanley got the boots from, and he pays as much as Paul does to get them. So it's like, it's crazy. Right. And they, within the last few years, they're like, oh, okay, we wanted to have like the Dynasty and Unmasked era, which is all brighter and more elaborate. And I'm like, okay, so it's just like putting all this money right back into the band. And the most interesting thing is that I'm excited about, they have their drummer is painted like the fox, like Eric Carr right now. So
cool. Very
Chris,
cool.
Which I would always think that, promoters and stuff be like, we need him to look like the kitty cat. But they're like, yeah, but this guy hits the way Eric Carr did. So I love stuff like that. And that's what I was mentioning, the tribute bands. Was that you would see so many and they're like, oh my God. So it's like they work on trying to move like the guys, and as long as they sound like them, it's great. So I love hearing about all that, and that sounds like it'll be a fun summer. But let's talk about the 5th. I listened to Haunted Heart, and there's a video for that, which we will share for our video audience. But I can't actually play the music on a YouTube stream, even though you're here, Roy. I still will probably get struck if I actually play the music. So we'll just kind of look. Yeah, the audio audience will get to hear a little bit of it. But so the latest, and there is the video for Haunted Heart, but I listened to a few other songs, Blind Starlight, Armed and Ready. So I'm enjoying very much what I'm hearing. So these are all from We Are One, which is, I guess, the latest album that you guys have put out. So tell us a little bit about this.
Well, very proud of this one. It's our first release for RFK Media, which is Ron Keel of the 80s metal band Keel. It's his label.
I keep trying to get Ron to tell me what the F stands for, and he won't. And I'm pretty sure I know, but he won't go on the record.
I think but Ron put a lot of faith in us, and his managing partner, Aaron Fisher, also believed in the band. And we were the first band signed to the label. So we knew that we had to really, put out a strong product. And, Ron being an entertainer and a songwriter and still out there doing shows and everything, he's the best record label president you could ever want, because he's not, on your, stepping on your neck all the time going, like, where's the product? We need product. He let us very organically finish writing up the songs and doing it at a pace that, we felt good about the songs that were coming out, because, I'm old school. People spend their hard-earned money on these things. I want to give them 12 great songs. I don't want to give them 2 good songs, 3 good songs. I want to give them 12 good songs. I want them to have a CD or an album or whatever format that they want, that they can listen to from beginning to end and feel like they got their money's worth. And I really think that we did that, because, there's a lot of different influences on it. There's 80s influences. It also has a modern rock kind of sound to it. So it's like, we weren't afraid to stretch ourselves. We weren't afraid to, cross some genre boundaries, like Armed and Ready and Blame It on Rock and Roll definitely has a little bit of a Southern twang to it, so, we brought a lot to the table, and I'm very, very proud of it. And the latest single and video is, something that, I'm really blown away with, because I had no idea that they were going to choose that as a single. And I had no idea that they were going to do this video, and the way it turned out, I'm just completely blown away with it. Very happy with it.
Yeah, no, it's great because obviously, there's a lot of reasons why bands will put out like the lyric video because it gets it out there on YouTube, but it's also cheaper. But I was just like, oh, this is great. This is like sort of what you remember from a music video. There's a story that I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know exactly what's going on, but think about your favorite videos from when you were a kid. I never knew what was going on. Why was Ozzy turning into a werewolf? I still don't know. You
Who
know,
knows?
it was a shot in the dark, I guess. But
Yeah,
and what I love is the notes that were sent to me is the way to describe this song was a chilling new song, which proves there is rock after death. And whoever came up with that, I'm like, that's a great way to sell a song. Probably somebody there, at RFK Media was like, I know
yeah,
what to say about this.
yeah. Well, I think the reason that Ron knew the background of what I was writing the song about. It's obviously the slow song. It's the ballad on the record, and
Sure.
I'm the type of lyricist that I want to try and write stories. I want to try and write stuff that is interesting. I don't want to stay within a very confined box. So with this one, when I first started hearing the music, I was like, okay, this has got a very haunting. It was very dark and moody. So what I did is I wrote from the angle of like, what if this man moves into an old house and it's haunted by a beautiful female ghost and he falls in love with the ghost falls in love with her. And basically that's what the song is about. And the people that did the video, they were able to read through my lyrics and kind of get a sense of where it was. So Haunted Heart is basically a love song for a ghost. And you know, the song stands on its own, but when you watch the video with the song, it does remind me of the 80s heyday where MTV would, a video like this would catapult a band to stardom. Um, but our previous video, Starlight, also a high production job.
Mhm.
The video before that for Shake Little Sister, uh, that video got us on the Kiss Cruise. We got to perform on the Kiss Cruise 2022 because they had a contest where it was like, hey, does your band want to play the Kiss Cruise? Submit your video. And the Shake Little Sister video is everything that a Kiss fan would want. There's a stripper on the bar. We're doing shots. There's chicks. The band's playing. There's just full debauchery. Starlight actually, like Ozzy and Shot in the Dark, has a werewolf who is dancing with a witch. The director of the video, he just got finished doing some advertising for a local haunted trail here in North Carolina, and they just got finished their season. So we were able to go to this haunted trail that had all these killer sets already done up, and their thing was they had like a $10,000-$15,000 full latex werewolf, movie quality werewolf costume, and the guy would come out and scare people on the trail and stuff like that. So we were able to incorporate that into the video and everything. And I won't tell everybody how much the video cost us, but it looks like we spent a whole lot of money on
Right.
this video. So we've already kind of been carrying the torch of the video music band type thing, even though we all know that's not the medium that is really selling records anymore. But we're an old school band. I'm an old school guy, and visually, these songs scream out for some type of video, and I'm really proud of the last three that we've put out, man. I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah, and the best thing about the Haunted Heart video is that it can very easily be found. It has its own URL, hauntedheartvideo.com. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, people can go to Roy Cathey and Fifth, find you guys on YouTube, but I was just like, you know what? Take that extra step, hauntedheartvideo.com, put it out there, and people can type all this stuff in, and they'll be able to find it. So, talk about the fifth part of Roy Cathey and the Fifth. How do these guys sort of come together to sort of be a part of this band with you?
Well, the fifth is something that's been my musical, vehicle for several years. It's been almost like musical therapy for me because I spent 5 years in Los Angeles through the Cold Sweat experience. And after the Northridge earthquake, I decided to get out of LA and I moved to Atlanta. And I got
By the
to
way, I have a friend who did exactly the same thing. He was working for the Jim Henson Company, and
right.
that earthquake happened, and he was back in Pennsylvania before the tremors stopped.
Right. So, from LA, I moved to Atlanta. I was in Atlanta through the whole Olympics and all that stuff. And my final years in Atlanta, my father, who managed my band and was a huge part of my life, he passed away. So me and my first wife, the mother of my kids, we decided to move back home to North Carolina. And the fifth was just kind of like musical therapy for me. It was, for the 5 years that I was in Atlanta, I wasn't singing in any bands, I wasn't writing any music. So when I came back to North Carolina, not only did I feel like I had to have some type of creative outlet again, I needed some money. So, I put together the fifth, and we started out doing covers, but everybody knew my background with Cold Sweat. So it was a matter of time that we started putting out original music. So over the past couple years, I've had various band members, in the project, and I've wrote songs with different people, and you can see the progress and the band, progressing with each release. And I'm proud of everything that we've done. We've kind of flown underneath the radar. We got to tour Japan in 2008. We got a digital distribution deal through Universal Music Group. We've had songs on Grey's Anatomy and The Voice, and we did some songs that were on the Olympics and stuff. So it's like we're one of those bands that we've primarily been here in the Southeast region, and we've been slugging it out in every beer bar that we can get booked at. But I mean, the fifth started out as a way for me to process my father's passing, and also opening up that creative outlet once again. So I'm proud of everything that I've done, and it's been a hell of a journey for sure.
Well, it definitely sounds that way, and you're talking sort of about placement on TV and during the Olympics, and it's interesting because it's such a huge part of like the way that music gets found. It's like if you get a
Yeah.
song in a video game, that's like huge these days, and it's all stuff that I don't think we certainly would have thought about when we were kids, even maybe when we were adults. It's crazy to think about, but yeah, obviously the right music placement, songs can really just blow up if it's in the right movie or the right song, I'm sorry, or
Right.
the right TV show. And yeah, I think that's kind of it's a great way to do it. And I mean, obviously the idea of having a song in a commercial used to be like, "Oh, I can't believe you're in a commercial." But
Yeah.
now, I mean, like, you have the classic bands catalogs, but like new bands are like, yeah, I'll take some
Oh
money.
yeah.
I'll take
Oh
some
yeah.
Mercedes Benz money. Sure, why
Ab-
not?
ab- Absolutely, but it is a bit strange whenever you hear like Born to Be Wild selling diapers on TV and stuff
Yeah,
like that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But I mean, you and I both know the music industry is completely different from how it used to
Oh
be,
yeah.
and it's a tough business, especially for rock bands. We are officially the redheaded stepchilds of the business, and you've got to you got to dip your toe in a lot of different waters. You got to have several projects going on. I got the fifth, I got Cold Sweat, I got the Boston Tribute Band. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you got to try and hit it, from various angles. But I've been a rocker my whole life, man. I can't break away from the genre because I love rock music. I love singing rock music. I grew up with, the Ronnie James Dios and the Freddie Mercurys and the Rob Halfords and, Ray Gillen and Jeff Tate. And, I could just go on and on and on. And that's in my DNA. So, I'm very thankful that I've taken care of myself through the years, and I could still hit the high notes and still do the Brad Delp stuff. And,
A-
so
and that's the key because obviously the first time you ever hear you mentioned him, the first time you ever hear Jeff Tate or Rob Halford get to some of those notes where you're like, I don't think humans can do that. I don't
I,
even.
I'll, I'll never forget. And it was, through my sisters, they had their boyfriends, that were trying to, get lucky with my sisters. So they knew I was a music fan. So they would bring all their old records over and let Roy Jr., well, I'm going to give all these old records to Roy Jr. And I'll never forget. Stained Class by Judas Priest.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
and I remember looking at the album cover and going, wow, what is this? And then putting on an Exciter, and I was just like, when he hit that high note, I was like, whoa, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
that made me open up the door to Judas Priest, and Unleashed in the East was, just a mind blower for me. So, I can do a mean victim of changes. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my
Well,
favorite ones to sing.
well, there you go. You should put that on YouTube because I would have come across it earlier today if you had.
It's
So
it's out there. It's out
okay.
there. Yeah, there's a version of me doing it with a band called Sweat and Bullets,
Okay.
which was after Cold Sweat lost our deal with MCA Records. We put together another project, and there's a video out there somewhere of me doing a victim of changes at a place I think it's called Florentine Gardens. It was somewhere down in Hollywood. So it's
Oh,
out there.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, you mentioned that you've got a busy summer doing the Boston tribute, and I think that that'll be great. And I know that Roy Cathey and the Fifth, you guys did a show as part of the M3 in Maryland, which that always seems like a fun, just such a great lineup of like, I don't know, all like 20 of your 30 favorite bands from the
Yeah.
90s, or the
Yeah.
80s
Yeah.
into the 90s. So that stuff like that always has to be fun. And
Yes.
I was never able to convince my wife that we needed to go on the Kiss cruise, Roy. She never felt like it was a good investment. I tried, but
Well, I'm telling you, man, have you ever been on a cruise before?
well, I've been on just a regular cruise, yeah, but never one of the music cruises. I know Don Jameson pretty well. Every year he goes on the Monsters of Rock, and I'm just like,
Oh
yeah, somehow my
man,
wife doesn't want to do it.
I've done 2 Monsters of Rock cruises, with Cold Sweat, and I've done the Kiss cruise with the Fifth. And man, once you do one of the music cruises, there's just no turning back. And what really makes it an incredibly unique experience is you're on a boat with thousands of people that like the same kind of music you do.
Right.
It's the same mindset. Everybody is just they're your people. You know what I mean? It's not the stuffy cruises where you go and do the formal dinners and you're sitting with Bob and Sally from Ohio, and there's Susie and Tom from Iowa, and you're sitting there making small talk about stuff that you really don't care about. On the Monsters of Rock cruise, man, it is just one big family, and
Yeah. Yeah,
you come
it
off
might
that.
be Susie and Tom from Iowa, but they're all like, we're doing shots, right? Yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah.
doing
We're
shots,
totally doing
and
shots.
I'm here to
It's
tell
10
you,
in the
man.
morning, but yeah, let's go do shots.
I can't hang with those people, man. I cannot, man. Those people, they still think it's 1983, and they are running hard. And I'm the guy that's always protecting his voice. So last cruise, I think I drank 2 beers the whole week I was on there. I'm sitting around like a singer nerd, drinking my hot tea and everything, protecting my voice. But Monsters of Rock cruise is just an amazing experience. So if you could ever maybe convince your wife that you're, going to go do something, just a regular laid back cruise, and just kind of surprise her with it. I think she'll, in the end, after she chews your ass
Yeah.
out, she'll
Well,
she'll be happy about it.
I turn 50 next year, and she said, "What do you want to do?" And I think, you know what, Roy, I think you've led me to right what I'm going to tell her. It's like, you know what, I know exactly what I want to do,
There
and
you go.
it's
There
usually right
you
around my
go.
birthday in February. Well, Roy, it's been great getting to chat with you. I know that people can find more about the band at thefifthmusic.com. Is there anywhere else I should send people to before we say goodbye?
You can find us on Facebook, and also on Instagram. We're the Fifth NC for North Carolina, and I'm also on Facebook as well. Easy to find. Roy Cathey. Just look up Roy Cathey, and I'm there. And I'm very fan friendly and very interactive, and that's the kind of band and that's the kind of person I am. But I want to thank you for having me on. Thanks for sharing your love for music and turning people on to new music and stuff like that. You guys that are doing these podcasts and everything, you guys are the unsung heroes, man. You guys are out there holding that banner high and flying the flag, man. So thanks for everything, and I appreciate you having me on.
Oh yeah, always happy to do it. And our visual audience, head over to hauntedheartvideo.com. Our audio audience, just sit back. You're going to actually get to hear a little of Haunted Heart. So thanks again for Roy Cathey for joining us. And we'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Thank you.